back. You're watching Global Today. I'm holding court with Dr. Hassan Sheikh, Director of the Horn Institute. Also, we have Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the Africa Policy Institute CEO. Also, we do have with us Professor Naomi Damba, who is a foreign policy and defense analyst. Hamid Hashi is a senior Horn of Africa analyst, also an expert on governance and policy. We do have as well Dr. Peter Biar Ajak, who is the president of Revive South Sudan. We're looking at the politics of the day in the country. Momentarily, I'll play you a clip by Martha Karua in 2017. As soon as I have it ready, we shall just hack back maybe to that particular discussion a bit. But allow us to cross over to Somalia right now, where we know that the former Somali leader Hassan Sheikh Mohamud won the presidency again in voting by parliamentarians on Sunday in an airport hangar protected by blast walls from Islamist insurgents whom he must now fight for a second time. The 66-year-old, who ruled from 2012 to 2017, reversed the previous election to defeat incumbent President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed by 214,110 votes in a third-round runoff whose results were confirmed around midnight. Supporters defied a curfew to pour onto the streets of Mogadishu, cheering and firing guns into the air. The former education campaigner and peace activist faces a daunting task in the nation of 15 million people, which is suffering its worst drought in 4 decades and has endured seemingly never-ending conflict since 1991. Though just holding the election was a success of sorts, many Somalis were skeptical of any real improvement. Most of the 36 candidates were old faces recycled from the past who had done little to stem war and corruption. They complained votes anyway influenced more by money changing hands than political platforms. Somalis and analysts say this. The United Nations backed vote was delayed by more than a year due to squabbling in government, but had to be held this month to ensure $400 million International Monetary Fund program. During the first round of voting, blasts from mortar shells rang out near the site but did not disrupt the proceedings. Now we want to analyze this. What does this portend for Kenya, especially with their frosty relations that has developed to, another level right now in relation to the maritime dispute, and also we can try and analyze how that particular war with Al-Shabaab is concerned. But just before we move on with the discussion, we have also this particular development where US President Joe Biden has authorized the redeployment of fewer than 500 American troops in Somalia. This is according to US officials who said this on Monday, after Donald Trump ordered their withdrawal during his presidency. Now, prior to Trump's withdrawal, the United States, I should say, had about 700 troops in Somalia focused on helping local forces defeat the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab insurgency. A senior administration official speaking on the condition of anonymity said Biden had approved the request from U.S. Defense Secretary, that is Lloyd Austin, to enable more effective fight against Al-Shabaab. The Pentagon said the troops would not be directly fighting in combat operations. Listen in.
Our troops who have incurred additional risk by deploying in and out of Somalia on an episodic basis for the past 16 months. Shifting to a persistent presence will not change the mission, and it will not imply substantial changes in resources. We're working now to evaluate local conditions, including those following the Somali presidential election yesterday, and we're engaging partners in the region, including the Somali government, to determine the best way forward. Al-Shabaab continues to conduct attacks, certainly there in Somalia. They have been capable of conducting attacks in the region. And we know that in the past they have expressed at least the intent and desire to attack outside the region, including against American interests. So we're watching this closely. This is not a threat that's going away. Again, it's not like we haven't been doing anything in Somalia at all. That's not true. It's just the Secretary believes, and the President has approved his recommendation, that that a better, more efficient way to get at that threat is to have a more persistent presence.
Right. Okay, that is the latest development as far as Somalia is concerned. Let me just bring in Dr. Hassan Sheikh briefly on this as well. Now we have Sheikh Mohamud. He's the president. He's been there before. What will be substantially different as far as his presidency is concerned. Looking at the Kenyan interest first.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to, once again, send congratulations to the people of Somalia for this election, which has been, fairly peaceful, and for Farmajo for accepting defeat after the third round of voting. Now, the election or re-election of HSM is significant. Is significant in that, number one, he's untested and known quantity among the Somalis. He's a lot less polarizing figure in Somalia compared to his predecessor, President Farmajo. And I think there is evidence, of course, to say that. And he brings in something different, especially insofar as regional diplomacy is concerned. The outgoing president was fairly antagonistic, with some of its neighbors, especially with Kenya, over the maritime issue as well as other issues. His position in fighting Al-Shabaab was not exactly very clear, as opposed to the incoming president, who's fairly been consistent on that. And I think that may also have informed the U.S. decision to actually, come back or redeploy into Somalia, because they have a sense of what his record is against the terror group. Now, what we hope going forward is, because of the new profile, but also the experience of this president,
yes,
that the relations between Kenya and Somalia are going to actually improve, and that the new president finds a way in which can be able to negotiate or dialogue with Kenya over the maritime issue. Because remember, despite the ruling of the ICJ, Kenya was very categorical in rejecting every aspect of that ruling, which means now the conflict over the maritime is frozen at base. So it has to be unfrozen through certain moves that are actually going to move towards some kind of dialogue, some kind of a negotiated settlement. With regard to the current U.S. posture, that is something that is welcome. However, it is not enough. I think Washington needs to do more, especially in supporting not just the ATMIs, but assisting in defactionalizing the security forces in Somalia. You saw last year what happened when the president tried to extend his term, and there were factional fighting within security forces. Of course, then you cannot be able to fight Al-Shabaab when you're also divided. And so the U.S., I think, should do more. There had been a sense in the region that it had been abandoned by Washington. We yet to get a new envoy from Washington, D.C., and so this does not communicate a very good message. So a more robust engagement, as well as coordinating with frontier countries such as Kenya, for instance, and countries that are actually being involved in Somalia right now in terms of peacekeeping and building capacity. Because doing in isolation alone is not going to assure success for Washington. Washington will have to work with the regional countries, but I'll also have more robust, because what also Biden added is there isn't going to be significant additional increase in terms of resources. I think that is a mistake. This region and Somalia needs significant additional resources to be able, number one, to root out terror, number two, to help that country put them back on a path towards development, progress, and democracy.
Hashi.
Well, Somalia has shown that its history as the first democratic country in Africa, that culture, that ethos is still there, even though it is wrapped around the pathos of state collapse and civil war. The anti-incumbency law that I talked about was that there's, among the Somalis who are a fierce race of Republicans, that there will be no one person who rules over them. It can happen in South Sudan, it can happen to other countries in Africa, but not among the Somalis, because they're all armed to the teeth and they don't like dictators. So I believed about that it is a historic moment that Mr. Farmajo, who was a very divisive figure in Somali politics, is out of the way. And Mr. HSM, popular called HSM, has come in. I don't think that Mr. Hassan Sheikh is going to bring something extraordinary or bring something, bring alacrity to that office. Mr. Hassan is a very grey politician a networking kind of guy. But the first things first, he's going to mend fences with Kenya. That within the next 100 days, the diplomatic situation in Kenya will be fixed. Remember, it is Mr. Hassan who took that case to The Hague, not Mr. Farmajo.
It was him. It was him.
It was him who took it to The Hague. But you know, it landed on Mr. Farmajo's desk.
So Farmajo is the one who's cutting the skunk.
Who took the flak. And you know, the court ruled in Somalia's favor, So that case is settled because in our constitution, you know, we have to follow international law. And of course, the Somalis feel that we have already taken much of their land. You know, there's a huge province there called Northeastern, which is inhabited by a couple of million of Somalis. That didn't fall from the sky. The British government handed it over to the Republic of Kenya. And of course, that is now water under the bridge. Everybody, my friend here, was cut from Uganda somewhere. We were cut from the other place, and we formed this nice new country called Kenya. And our loyalties are here now. Be that as it may, the issue is, Debal, that in Somalia today, there's three things that's needed. Debal, number one, is unity. Number two, Debal, is unity. Number three, Debal, is unity. Because we want something called the undiscovered country, East Africa. And the potential of Somalia to make our gross domestic product in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, and all these that can jump by huge decimal points, is there are two countries, Debal, in this region that we really need to pacify. And that's South Sudan and Somalia. And both of these countries, Debal, have massive amounts of resources. And we in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania and around the region have a huge amount of professionals. We could go and create a revolution in education, a revolution in the market, a revolution in democracy, a revolution in culture. We would export Kiswahili to Mr. Ajak's home province of Bahr el Ghazal. And they can say Mambo Nippon, like they do here in the estates. Debal, I think that the political economy of Somalia today, there is no question in my mind that the Americans should not send troops to Somalia, Debal. I think this is a bad policy. I think what they should do, and I want to buttress my learned friend on the right, is that we need to create the wherewithal for the Somalis themselves to create institutions of security to defeat the Al-Shabaab. They can be advised by the Americans, they can be advised by the British, they can be armed by them, they can be given technologies to use, but it is the responsibility of the Somali people to defeat those terrorists and get them out of their country. And the first job that that man has is to bring security back to Mogadishu and to the south. And the second thing he has is Debal, is to reach out to Somaliland. Because Debal, you know, they're in a cul-de-sac. They're in a pipe dream that is not working. And it's time someone showed them that the only way to do is to negotiate between the North and the South and bring back the Somali Union so that it can become a member of the Committee of Nations. Debal, we cannot give a flag to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in this continent. We cannot give a flag to the Maramas and say they want to be a Republic of Marama.
Thank you.
So, Debal, we want unity in Africa. We want unity in East Africa. We want unity, because that is the way that Africans are going to move forward in this century.
Okay, so
I'm very hungry.
Who's very hungry?
Me.
Hungry or angry?
Angry with this Hashi.
You're angry with Hashi.
Everybody is angry with me. Why?
Now, before my anger.
You go first.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I'm angry because Hashi believes that there cannot be the Republic of Murang'a.
What?
That's crazy.
What did he say?
Hashi said that there cannot be a Republic of Murang'a with a flag. I've been to Mauritius. We have the same population, 1.2. 1.2. And Mauritius is stronger economically than Kenya. Who told you that we cannot make Murang'a stronger than this, failing republic? I mean, together with the Somalia. So don't give us that crap. Murang'a republic is possible. But let me turn to a more serious issue about HSM. At a personal level, I've had a good opportunity to say the person, at the personal level, a very, very sober, level-headed leader for Somalia. I would certainly say he is a statesman. He's a statesman because this is a man who saw nonsense in Kenya's behavior. When he was trying to set the boundaries, Kenya had just set the boundaries with Tanzania, but our elite here started dilly-dallying and changing things and playing with things and doing their rent-seeking about the boundaries. And very high placed officers in the Republic of Kenya were involved. And you know, Hassan Sheikh got tired and furious and said, if you cannot deal with it as two people, if you have to go on with this rent-seeking and all this nonsense, he took the case to the court. He did not take the case to the court on ideological ground. He took it on the ground of functionality, because the Kenyan state at that juncture was not functioning and the officers were corrupt and they were rent-seeking. Now, so obviously Kenya took issues with Hassan Sheikh at that juncture, said you should have cooled down, but this was an aftermath after they knew the consequences of the case being taken there because of their filibustering and playing around with a national boundary. Hassan Sheikh is an institutional builder. He's a moral person who believes in this stability, and therefore what we expect in Mogadishu is that he's going to replace the ongoing camaraderie between Al-Shabaab and Amni and the government, which Farmajo condoned. Because today the dividing line between the intelligence of Somalia, NISA, and the intelligence of the Al-Shabaab, Amniyat, that line is visibly thin, very thin. We need to remove that. And obviously, this man, we expect that the local level is going to focus on institutional building, consolidation of democracy. They have gone for almost 2 years without election, and they have seen the cost that has brought to Somalia. Therefore, the focus on institutional building will have to go hand in hand with dealing the concrete economic issues. Somalia has already started being integrated into the international economic system. We are talking about drought. You cannot deal with the drought without resources from outside and their management internationally. Finally, I think one will need to underscore what has happened at the regional diplomacy. I know in history classes, we question whether an individual has a role. I think Hassan Sheikh is a breath of fresh air in regional diplomacy and the geopolitics of the Horn. Already we have a problem. Eritrea is holding 20 troops of Somali boys and girls who the region managed to keep until the election is over. Those troops have to be returned home. And how they are returned, they could not return because if they did, they would have messed up with the election. Now, they have to return home and be integrated into the Somali forces. Now, he's going to have a calming effect on Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya relations. And possibly, we are going to see the return of IGAD as a powerful body, brokering peace not only in Somalia and the region, but also in South Sudan and Sudan. So he is a breath of fresh air in regional diplomacy in the Horn. I congratulate the people of Somalia. I congratulate my colleagues in Somalia, and I'm happy for them.
All right. Okay. Professor Naomi Damba, looking at the foreign policy, of which also this is right up your alley at the end of the day, harking back to also what Hashi has told us, that that particular dispute with the maritime, this was lodged at The Hague by Mohamud Sheikh. Yeah. So do you think right now he will be maybe warming up to the idea on settling it out? Of course, we know there was a ruling by the court at the end of the day, but the dynamics and the frosty relations still remain.
Well, this is, we welcome the election of Hassan Mohamud, and I would indicate that this is a breath of fresh air. Dubala was very concerned about how we manage Somalia can ultimately have a significant adverse impact in this country. Turkey has hegemonic interest in Somalia. The Middle Eastern country have interest in Somalia, not for the betterment of Somalia, not for the good order of Africa and East Africa, but for their own interest. And therefore, we need a steady hand, a steady president managing Somalia. And this former president happened to be the one that will be able to talk to East Africa Community, IGAD, OAU, and create closer to a meaningful relationship. But I'm looking for days when Somalia and also Ethiopia will be part of the East African community, such that we can form a formidable economic bloc. But there is one thing. Kenya team must be consistent on their focus with Somalia relationship. This issue about the dispute that we have had is not going to be solved easily because it's been taken to another level. But our commitment jointly behind the scene with Somalia will be to bring it back to IGAD and OAU and solve it for our best interest.
Mm-hmm. Right. For our best interest, looking forward to Somalia joining and Ethiopia as well, the East African community. What will it portend as far as this region is concerned? Let's hear from Dr. Peter Bera-Jack. We had also Hashi saying it's not really a good idea to have, the American troops back on American soil at the end of the day. Why do you think that should not really happen from your own assessment, or it should happen at the end of the day? Because when looking at the current state of play with the fight on Al-Shabaab, we can see that has been also gaining traction looking at the past 3 years. So they've not really been able to, head of this particular, to actually blot out this particular menace in Somalia.
Well, first of all, Dibal, let me take the time to congratulate the people of Somalia for this historic moment. I have to give it to them because I was worried for quite some time that Mr. Pramoja was going to hold that country hostage and prevent any kind of transition from taking place. And I was actually worried about him winning, quote unquote, winning again the election. But now I can have a sigh of relief. And I have to say also, I'm kind of jealous of Somalia because they have changed their presidents at least 3 or 4 times since South Sudan got independence, and we've been stuck with the same individuals. And it's good to have a change because change provides for new ideas and new thinking into government and into rethinking the overall perspective of a nation and where it stands. I think this is a great moment for Somalia. I think there is great things to be expected from the newly elected president. Now, in regard to the question that you asked, basically from just reading between the lines at what the spokesperson of the Pentagon was saying, it seemed the recommendation came from the Secretary of Defense, which basically means it came from the Joint Chiefs. And then it went to the president, and then the president signed it. That means that this policy is largely coming from the Pentagon. And if it is coming from the Pentagon, it's largely a security issue. A security issue thinking about long-term American interests, thinking about the threat of terrorism in the Horn of Africa, thinking about the global competition between China and other big powers who are taking up bases in the Horn of Africa and in different parts of Africa. These are the lines, in my view, this is the scope at which this decision is coming from. It's certainly not coming from the State Department, because the State Department is the one that is supposed to have the bigger strategic analysis of larger issues like democratic trends, social norm. But this is coming from Pentagon. And it's kind of worrying because it means here the State Department, for one reason or another, is not shaping the Africa policy the way that many people expected. And the Horn of Africa's special envoy is resigning after being there for less than a year. The previous one was not there for a year. So there are a lot of questions there. But since it is coming from the Pentagon, the issue is largely security. It's, I think, primarily to fight al-Shabaab, to have a better understanding and the mapping of ISIS and how it is communicating and financing of itself, connection possibly to other actors like Iran and other actors further afield. I think these are the main scope. But I wouldn't rule out training for the Somali security forces, because U.S. has been a biggest contributor of resources and of equipment for the Somali National Army. But to the extent to which this is integral to the mission, that is yet to be, in my view, it is not yet very clear. Now, on the issue of the maritime dispute, I'm glad that Kenya has, well, it's great that Somalia took the case to the court, because that is the only way in which it could be resolved. We wouldn't expect neighbors going to war at each other. So I'm glad that it was taken to the court. The court has decided. Now, it doesn't mean that the two countries cannot sit down and iron the issue out, but there needs to be a bit of humility into this, because I think Somalia's hand has been strengthened by the ruling, and Kenya has no choice, because it's part of the international architecture in accepting these norms. So I think now Kenya has to come to the table and negotiate with Somalia to see if they can reach a better understanding. But obviously here the ruling is in favor of Somalia. And I think at the end of the day, we should all be willing to help the people of Somalia, because they are showing to the rest of the world that they are willing to take a step forward. And I think all we can do now is to allow them to continue walking on that path toward stability.
Right. Thank you very much. I think that does it for now for Somalia, unless you have any other comment you want to make.
I want to reply to Professor Kagwanja's comment about...
briefly?
You know, there in Muranga, they say, Demina Madadi, Tenena Tene. So how is he going to introduce the Republic of Muranga in the court of St. James? Mukura wa Nyagadanga? This is ridiculous. I believe that's treasonous things to say by Mr. Kagwanja. This is the Republic of Kenya, and we don't believe in secessionism. And you should not say such things here. Very bad.
Kagwanja, you want to respond that you address the issue of the Moranga Republic. And you coming with a fedora cap today, of course, the Moranga, Texas city in the Republic. Just briefly before we move on a lighter note.
The problem with Hashi's suggestion that the northern part of Kenya is a part of Somalia and whatever, when I know that these Somalis are coming from...
No, he says he didn't say that.
I didn't say that.
No,
he denies stoutly that he didn't.
No, don't change the subject.
He's a denialist.
No, I'm not a denialist. You're changing the subject.
Moranga, Texas Cup there. Let's put it off for now. Okay, let's go back to U.S. and where U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday called on all Americans to reject the poison of white supremacy, addressing families and local officials at the Buffalo, New York site of what police say is a racially motivated mass shooting over the weekend. He said the white gunman who killed 9 black Americans and a white security guard trying to protect them was fueled by, quote-unquote, hate that through the media and politics. Hate that is through the media and politics. The internet has radicalized angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced by the other, by people who don't look like them. Let's just listen in before we buckle down and discuss this.
Hate will not prevail, and white supremacy will not have the last word. For the evil did come to Buffalo. It's come to all too many places. Manifest in gunmen who massacred innocent people in the name of hateful and perverse ideology, rooted in fear and racism. It's taken so much. What happened here is simple and straightforward. Terrorism. Terrorism. Domestic terrorism. Violence inflicted in the service of hate and the vicious thirst for power that defines one group of people being inherently inferior to any other group. A hate that through the media and politics, the internet, has radicalized, angry, alienated, lost, and isolated individuals into falsely believing that they will be replaced, that's the word, replaced, by the other, by people who don't look like them, and who are therefore in a perverse ideology that they possess and being fed lesser beings. I and all of you reject the lie. I call on all Americans to reject the lie. And I condemn those who spread the lie for power, political gain, and for profit. That's what it is.
Right, Dr. Hassan Kanenji, just a quick one on that. The white supremacy rising again. We saw that all happening in New Zealand. This also young man had, be sort of, kissing the joint for a while 2 months earlier. So this was actually something that was preconceived and, of course, planned prior.
Mass shootings in the U.S., of course, they're not new, and especially racist, driven shootings. America's original sin still keeps coming back to haunt it. And this is something that has never been resolved. When you look at the manifesto that this gentleman was alluding to is, rather pointed to the replacement theory, which kind of suggests that there is an effort to replace white Americans with people of non-white, descent through immigration, interracial marriage. So please stay away from white women, as well as violence. And this is something that has actually been peddled, even as recent as this year and even last year. Some of these theories are actually peddled on mainstream Fox News channels by people like Tucker Carlson, and who were alluding to the fact that by Democrats embracing immigrants, they're actually trying to change the electoral map by bringing in people from what, in his words, third world countries who are more obedient, and therefore they're going to just suck it up, to their wishes. And unless and until we actually confront the original sin and the institutional racism, not just in the United States, but across the world, especially in advanced economies, is going to be dangerous. Now, what does this mean or say to us? Words do have consequences. And especially for during this political season in Kenya, that when leadership or media peddle certain theories or conspiracies, it has potential to provoke the type of violence we are seeing. And so, even as there's a sense of almost hopelessness, you can see the Republicans in the U.S. are largely quiet.
Yes.
No one is actually addressing the elephant in the room, which is institutional racism, which is the Second Amendment, this kind of unlimited ownership of guns and gun rights movements, and just a phenomenon, literally, of silence when actually it comes to discussing things that are very controversial. And so this is something that has to be addressed. America has to come to terms with its own history as well as its own present, but the rest of the world has to learn from it, because institutional racism around the world has fueled the kind of anti-Semitism, the kind of anti-black people. For instance, 11 out of the 13 people who were killed were actually blacks. And the choice of Buffalo was picked in part because this person believed this is a place with the most black people. It's important for our audience to understand that the black population in the United States only account for about 12 to 13%. And so this theory of hate is something that has to be rooted out in the United States, in Europe, as well as on our own African continent.
Thank you. Ahmed Hashi, your comments.
Dibal, the great Malcolm X said that we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Plymouth Rock is where the pilgrims landed. Dibal, the American civilization, as my friend here on the right said, my learned friend on the right said, I put it to you, has this original sin. And this original sin, Dibal, is not a sin that is recent. Dibal, that sin was exported from Europe. I think we really need to remember that. That before the Americans went to the United States, the sin was already there in Europe, where they were putting men and women who looked like me and you in boats, and they were putting men and women of color in boats and sending them to the Caribbean, the United States, and Brazil And Debal, you know, that fueled the capital system. It is slave labor that laid the foundations of the United States. It is slave labor that brought up the economy of Europe. London, Liverpool, and all these cities, Debal, were built on the backs of the selling of African children. And that is a global sickness that the European civilization has wrought. And Debal, it behooves us to understand that we cannot continue to dilly-dally on how we are going to respond to this kind of white supremacy. Debal, I put it to you that the African response to white supremacy is to create the wherewithal for Africans to make their continent a place that is a civilized place, for want of a better term, and a place where Africans don't have to flee to go by Lufthansa Airways to New York, Washington, and Dallas. I think we can create our own Dallas and Washington and in here. And Debal, white supremacy only understands one thing. It understands a defense. It understands a rejection. It does not understand the urge to say that we are all human beings. White supremacists do not see other people as human beings. They see us as children of a lesser God. And therefore, Debal, it is our responsibility to create a hearth, to create the wherewithal for our own civilization here, so that we don't have to deal with this nonsense of supremacy based on pigments.
All right, thank you. Naomi Damba, briefly.
Debal, I was confronted by a Ku Klux Klan, the worst experience I had in America. All 30 years was very noble, very positive experience. I've had great opportunity. But Debal, I was confronted by a young man who was absolutely extremist in New Orleans. And Debal, I engaged that young man to find out what was wrong, and his upbringing and everything. And eventually, Debal, I made arrangement for that young man to come to Denver, Colorado and complete his law school. And when he got married, and when he was planning to get married, he insists that I must be his best man. Debal, I obliged, and that young man is one of the most successful people in America today, in Chicago, and with a very fine family. So what it takes, Debal, from Martin Luther King to Rosa Parks, the 60s, all this craziness went underground. It didn't disappear until Trump came on the scene. And the issue about Trump was Barack Obama becoming president of the United States. And how dare, and Trump is a salesman of the extreme order. And so he appealed to all this ugliness, Debal, and they're back on the scene. These people are watching Kamala Harris becoming vice president of the United States are threatened, Debal, and they need a one-to-one engagement. And you cannot afford to globalize this issue. It has to be dealt with from a domestic, national, American issue. Europe, the same thing. And Africa, like my friend just said, we have to create an environment in Africa that accepts everybody based on the ability to provide improvement in the welfare of the country and the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Peter Kagwanja, briefly.
Two things. First, obviously, America needs to commit itself to the principle of equality of men. I think the idea that created the United Nations as a body epitomizing that all men and women are created equal in America is on the decline. And populism is really taking the better of our society. So I think Biden's greatest test is to roll back the impact of Donald Trump in terms of undermining all the ethical principles on which our common humanity has been based. And what you are seeing there is just an epitome of what has happened. Two, I think the Africans need to be a little bit serious now. The Jews across the world have taken it as their responsibility to protect their own who are harassed. I don't think, after what we saw with George Floyd and everybody else, we need to shut. The African Union need to take its idea of being the protector of the African diaspora seriously. And at the African Union, we need to make a resolution that never again shall Africans from Ecuador to India, to America, to Europe, be subjected to this kind of racism. We have just seen what has happened in Ukraine, in the war between Russia and Ukraine. We were here, we spoke about it. We are seeing it elsewhere. You've seen what is happening in Saudi Arabia in a number of cases. Migrant workers from any corner of Africa being harassed. I think we need to assert the dignity of the African personality. This was the idea of Seda Senghor. This was Nkrumah's idea. This is Aimé César's idea. The African personality matter, and we are equal human beings with theirs. The African Union need to take that as its primary agenda.
Thank you. Right, Dr. Peter Jack, briefly.
Briefly, I'm not going to, of course, we know the history of the United States, the history of the racism in this country. But there are three key phenomena that are driving this. One is what Professor Madambo mentioned, the elections of Barack Obama, a black man whose father came from Kenya, becoming the face of the United States. That unsettled a lot of people and unleashed a lot of dark side of white supremacy into the American politics. Second is a changing demographic. I think it was year 2008 that the population of children that are being born of color for the first time are more than the population of children that are being born who are white. So basically the future of this country is going to be more mixed. Currently, the white people account for 67% of America. The rest are non-white. But over time, because primarily due to immigration from South America and Mexico, the population of non-white is shooting up rapidly. So this has scared a lot of people. The third was the Donald Trump. And what has happened since then? Trump injected racism in a blatant way into American politics. And he did it in a very, very intelligent way, saying that he was against politically correct speech. But what he was doing was blowing the dog whistle that the racists in this country listened to. And since then, they felt liberated. They can act with racism. And to be honest with you guys, this country, what is happening is beyond what the institution of the United States can control. Because this is now injected into the American populace. And you see them doing rallies. The other day they were doing a rally that was attended by members of Congress where they were parading Nazis' flags and the Southern white nationalist flag, and they were chanting Hitler. And members of Congress from the Republican Party were present at this meeting. Right now, you can't get the leadership of the Republican Party to even condemn what is being done in some of these activities. And if you look at the polls, Biden is actually losing. The approval rating of Joe Biden now are in low 40%. And you have someone like Donald Trump now in a matchup potentially beating Joe Biden. This is a real concern. I agree with those who are calling on African Union to do a lot more. Let's not forget Malcolm X. One of the reasons the Pan-Africanism, it just didn't develop in Africa alone. It has contribution of Americans from the diaspora. Marcus Garvey, W.B. Du Bois, and Malcolm X himself. His concept of black nationalism, investing in our resources, controlling the means of production, empowering our people, controlling where we live, and owning the assets and the means of production where we live. That is the future, and it's the only thing that will liberate the black people on the planet.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, just to also apprise you on what is happening on the U.S., that is Ukraine-Russian war, we have Vladimir Putin, who has signaled that Russia will tolerate Finland and Sweden joining NATO, but warned that the Kremlin would respond if the alliance installed military bases or equipment in either country. Russia's president said that the proposal or the proposed NATO enlargement posed, quote-unquote, no direct threat for Russia, adding that he had no problems with either Finland or Sweden. Speaking on a day that Sweden formally announced its membership application, while acknowledging it will remain vulnerable until it joined, Putin warned that expanding military infrastructure onto this territory would provoke a response from Russia based on the threats they create. Let's just listen in briefly.
Финляндия, Швеция. В России хотел бы вас проинформировать, уважаемые коллеги, нет проблем с этими государствами. Нет. И поэтому в этом смысле непосредственной угрозы для нас расширение за счет этих стран для России не создается. Но расширение военной инфраструктуры на эту территорию, безусловно, вызовет нашу ответную реакцию. И какой она будет, мы будем смотреть, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создаваться.
And also, Turkey surprised many NATO allies on Monday by saying it will not support membership for Sweden and Finland after the two countries took the widely anticipated step of agreeing to apply to join the US-led alliance this week. Listen in.
Pazartesi günü Türkiye'ye geleceklermiş. Ya bizi ikna etmeye mi gelecekler? Kusura bakmasınlar. Yorulmasınlar. Her şeyden önce Türkiye'ye yaptırım uygulayanların bu süreç içerisinde bir güvenlik örgütü olan NATO'ya girmelerine biz evet demeyiz. Her iki ülkenin de terör örgütlerine karşı açık net bir tavrı söz konusu değil. Kaldı ki bu süreç içerisinde bu terör örgütlerine karşı kalkıp biz karşıyız deseler bile ki tam aksini teslim etmeleri gereken bazı teröristlerle ilgili teslim etmeyeceklerine dair açıklamaları var.
Development there on the Ukrainian war, and we keep our eyes peeled on that. Back on our home politics, as we're winding up right now, I'd promised you that this was a statement made by Martha Karua in 2013, especially on what we were putting on the table on fighting corruption. Now that they've joined forces with Raila Odinga, does she still hold the same view? Listen in.
I do not share any values with the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, nor do I admire his politics. In fact, I've been calling upon him to go home together with President Kibaki. Both of them, both he and President Kibaki, have been totally unable to uproot corruption from within their ranks. And therefore, both the voters of Kenya ought to be good enough to send both home, one by law and the other by the ballot.
All right, so we have Kalonzo really biting that watermelon, and we say, oh, consistently. This was a statement where in 2013, of course, this is politics, and then politics is a long day indeed. Let's just hear from Dr. Hassan Kanenja. Just listen to that, and fighting corruption, now they've joined forces.
Yeah, you know, first of all, she may have to bite not the watermelon, but the water hyacinth. That's quite a mouthful. Yeah, but I think there's also a context within which she was saying, you know, she was running for president at the time, way back in 2013.
Yes.
And I think she was trying to be able to build her own profile by not giving a lot of credit to the other candidates. And so I look at it from a point of political opposition.
So you got Samia, yes.
Yes, yeah. But of course, I think that is also a testament that we should be careful what we say.
Of course.
Because we may have to, it may come back to bite us and we have to swallow our words. So good luck with the hyacinths, Madam Karua. But I think she's going to do well.
Yeah, just comment on that as well. We'll give you the last comment briefly.
I think we should cut Mother some slack. She's at the bottom of the totem pole on the question of hypocrisy. I think the rest of the guys up there are more hypocritical. And the Mother is a lone goldfish singing in a tank of sharks from the ethnic groups. And you know, I'm a father who has daughters, and Debala, I'm sensitive to issues of women. And although I might have my views on Mother, but I can say that we should welcome her and hope she'll be the next vice president of this republic.
Maybe we should listen to that bite again, so that let's just listen to it again, Peter Kagwanja. Before we go to Moranga, Texas, the Federa. If my director may just play it again, we listen to it keenly. Yes, you know.
I do not share any values with the Prime Minister Raila Odinga, nor do I admire his politics. In fact, I've been calling upon him to go home together with President Kibaki. Both of them, both he and President Kibaki, have been totally unable to uproot corruption from within their ranks. And therefore, both the voters of Kenya ought to be good enough to send both home, one by law and the other by the ballot.
You know what, I suspect Martha Karua maybe, or Right Honorable Raila Odinga must have listened to Martha Karua in 2013 and thought, you know what, maybe we should give it to Martha Karua to stanch this flow of corruption, because, yeah, you remember Abraham Lincoln, who was the fiercest critic, right? And after Abraham Lincoln got the presidency, who was his special advisor, or that particular critic? Is this what is really panning out, Peter Kagwanja? Briefly.
Yes, I think so, because if you look at the trend in the world, Hillary Clinton was the greatest critic of Obama. He became the Secretary of State. Kamala Harris mounted one of the most vicious campaigns against Biden and the Democrats. She's now the Deputy President or the Vice President. Martha Karua has been consistently critical of the double standards by our elite in terms of dealing with corruption and other malfeasances. And now she's the Deputy President candidate for Azimio. It is that you get the best to deal with one of your worst problems. And I think Martha Karua is the best, particularly when it comes to governing in dealing with corruption at that level. Obviously, Martha put herself into trouble at those times, particularly during the Moi Kibaki, when she started fighting corruption in judiciary, and corruption started fighting back. So she has learned one or two lessons, and I'm sure she's going to deal with it later on. I wouldn't give weight to this idea that I don't agree with Raila and all. I mean, Martha Karua was a presidential candidate herself, and you cut your enemy to size. And that statement demonstrates how eloquent she is in cutting Raila Odinga to size. That, you have to go home. Kibaki will go via the constitution, you will go home via the ballot, and I'm going to replace you so that I fix corruption. It's a very rhetorical but very eloquent statement she makes there, basically revealing what kind of metal she's made of.
Right, what kind of metal she's made of. Professor Noami Damba.
One of the reasons I'm excited about this candidate as a deputy by...
I wanted to make the comment. Could we have a comment on that particular clip that we played? Yes.
My comment is Martha Karua is consistent about the issue of corruption.
Okay.
You can trace her back how many years to the bar and find that is the thrust of Martha Karua. It is time that we build a special section or committee and take people, the bar like Sonko and the rest out there to raise cattle and or goats, for us to eat. But they cannot be in public.
Maybe we should give you that tender.
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
You should be awarded this tender of building this special
I will be
section.
Kagwanja and I will join together.
Yes, yes, I'll join.
Please, don't go with that Boranga, Texas cap.
No,
you should get a helmet. Yeah. Yes.
Don't worry about the helmet. No. We are doing fine.
The ball is Muranga Kindu Bay. Join together.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear from Dr. Peter Bierajak.
Well, Dubal, my only take on this is, if I am William Ruto watching this, and this is how these ladies speak of Raila Odinga, then oh my God, the trouble is really coming, and trouble is really at my doorstep. But this lady is voracious, and she's going to come like a serious attack dog. And I think that camp should be really worried. What it shows there is a lady that is willing to speak her mind, that is cutting to the core issues and very easy to connect with voters, because she cuts to the issue that people actually care about. And now Raila Odinga has a great excuse. Yes, there were people in my rank, such as those who are now joining William Ruto. And I need your help, Martha, to come and clean up all this mess around me and possibly the mess around the country. So I think she will be great. And the technocratic expertise just speaks for itself. I have a great hope for what she will mean, not just only for Kenya, but for the region, should her candidacy succeed.
Right, and of course, Martha Karua also, she's not really, you know, that particular Caesar's wife who's above reproach, so to speak, Dr. Hassan Kanenje. We may hack back and we discuss that this is a security threat that was there with Artur and the Baragrian brothers in this country. And it was during her tenure as a Minister of Justice, right, that we had that. So we cannot really also, you know, forget that her copybook is not really blotted with all those issues. Anglo-leasing also really hangs around her as well, so to speak. We had the 2007 saga, the KICC, that she's smack dab in the middle in terms of, you know, machinations that were there as well. How she was at KICC?
Oh my goodness.
She can give us an account of what really happened at the KICC. You want to know that the KICC then?
This is an absolutely unfair question.
Why is it fair? You can just, in relation to Martha Karua.
Okay, let me say this.
What really happened there?
Let me say this. I was talking about the political culture of this country. And one of the things about the political culture of this country is this, you know, it's called this sucking effect. You know, when you use a thing on the carpet to clean the carpet,
the vacuum cleaner.
The vacuum, it's got this swoosh. Any political player in this country has to kind of pay some dirt to his ethnic community, has to pay to the political elites of this country, has to pay a lot of payments to many, many pockets in the political economy of this country. Martha Karua is a progressive on social affairs, but she's a hawk on other issues. I mean, that means she's a complicated woman and a complicated politician. And
I'm interested on these other issues.
I'm coming. Debal, I'm coming.
Yes,
there is no politician who does not have his dark skeletons. And those are things that are going to come up just as much as we're criticizing Mr. Ruto on issues of corruption, on issues of being a hawk in Kanu, all these things. Everybody has a history. And it is the press that's going to bring these issues up so that they can give Kenyans an informed choice. I've made my choice as a Kenyan and as a citizen, and I support the ticket of Mr. Odinga and Mother. And I think that they're the best progressive group to go into government and help fight the problems that we have in this country. They have proven it. They have been in the trenches. I've been in the trenches with them. And I think that it's very important that we cut some slack on Madam Karua, simply because this is a completely new experiment. And we have a woman on the ticket for the first time since independence. And I think that this country ought to accept that the times are changing and that people like Madam Karua should be given a decent shot, because I've said on the totem pole of all the bad things that we have in this country, Ms. Karua is at the bottom of the totem pole. She's not at the top like Sonko and Ruto and Mr. Gachagua, who incidentally had 100 billion shillings in his account. Martha Karua doesn't have 1 billion shillings in her account.
Well, you don't have any evidence that you can table?
No, it's on the newspaper. It's a fact.
Where? Which newspaper? I haven't really come across that. Which
maybe
newspaper?
You haven't read about it. It was in the Standard, actually. Yes. So you're right. You saw it.
Which Standard? Which day?
Last week. There was about...
No, you need to just...
No, there was 3 weeks ago in which Mr. Gashago's accounts had billions of shillings. Ms. Karua doesn't have billions of shillings in her account.
But how do you know?
Well, because she declared her property. And she had about 700 million or 600.
You can be editorial with that.
No. She declared how much money she had.
Thanks.
Yes.
Let's hear from Dr. Hassan Kanenji, because Arthur and Magrian also had filed a case against Raila Odinga when he was the Liberal Democratic leader of defamation, right? That they were imposters. But we wonder, how did they really get guns, get clearance, and they were working scot-free in this country. We were wondering, who are they associated? Who have they brought them in this country?
Yeah.
There are still looming questions that have never been answered.
That is a stain on the Kibaki administration generally, and it is something that needs, of course, to be answered. But when it comes to judgments on the leadership, especially this cycle, every politician, Dibal, has skeletons. It's the nature and extent of the skeletons that determine. Some have skeletons from the genocide in Rwanda, but others have skeletons from eating chicken. Yes. And so there is a massive difference in that. So when it comes to judgment, I think we have to look at that.
All right, thank you. Last comments. Last comments. Peter Kagwanja, on that particular note, as we're winding up, then we get the rounds of last comments briefly.
You must not conflate things that were happening under Kibaki government and put them, heap of them on Mother, because Mother was the Minister for Justice for just a small while. For the better part of the time, she was also Minister for Water and so on. Magriani was...
We have the Arthur and Magrian reports, and Martha is quoting that particular report.
No, I'm saying...
So it's not really conflicting issues, is that,
I mean, but that was the Kibaki regime. Judge Mother for what she is. She was not the Kibaki regime. In fact, to be honest with you, and to be clear, the Kibaki regime of the time pushed Mother progressively out of the mainstream because she was very hard and strong. And I remember there are some compromises that Mother made, that if she was not under that system, she should not have done that. I think the point we're making is that she's a strong personality. She has resolve on some of these issues, and she's a hope that we can pedal back to some sobriety in our society.
Thank you. All right, Peter, Dr. Naomi Dama, just briefly. Professor Naomi Dama, sorry.
Dubal, give me a minute to say what I need to say.
And that also will couple up as your parting shots as well.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Which is my parting shot. Dubal, we have a society in Africa that has always respected elderly. And the elderly young people have never been an issue. Dubal, we're using that in politics right now, where we're castigating the older folks in our society, and the young people are emulating that as a common thing. And it's a very, very dangerous trend. We have to stop this thing about interreligious society, cut this country down, race, and then gender, and then now the young and the older. Let's talk issues that matters to this country.
Thank you. Dr. Peter Bierachak, briefly as we're winding up.
Yes, just on the issue of Martha Karua, definitely, she is someone that has a history. And I think this is where you and other journalists, Dubal, will have to play your role in holding each one of them accountable for things that they have done in the past. But in support of what Hashi was saying, maybe there is no, I'm not saying 100 billion, but there is here an article from 1st of July 2020 from The Star, written by Felix Olicht, where basically the MP Gachagua received more than 5.7 billion in 7 years, and the asset recovery department here linked him to what they term as a complex scheme of money laundering. So you people would have to do your job in making sure people of Kenya are informed about these choices and the values that they represent. On my parting thought, again, I want to congratulate the people of Somalia for the new dawn. I want to encourage every Kenyan who is qualified to vote in the election to register, because voting is a privilege, is a real privilege, and is the testament of citizenship. I encourage everyone to sign and to ensure that they cast a vote, because I, as a South Sudanese, have never had such a chance. So I encourage you, there is no greater joy than to be able to select those who are entrusted with your affairs. So register and vote.
Thank you. Register and vote. Let's see if Hashi, your parting shots, briefly.
I just want to wish the Honorable Melis Elam, the ambassador of Ethiopia to Kenya, is leaving.
Oh, he's leaving?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I want him to tell his prime minister that there needs to be reconciliation with the people of Tigray, and it needs to start from the prime minister's office. We want a whole, well Ethiopia, because it is the heart of Africa, and we wish him well. I hear he's going to be promoted in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So good luck, Ishi.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Hassan Kanenje.
I think this goes to a lot of our, especially European and American partners in Kenya, that even as we focus on some crises in the West, we should not forget the kind of tragedies that are going on around the continent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And lastly, Peter Kagwenja, Professor.
I think we want to take this opportunity to thank the people, to congratulate the people of Somalia, and to thank them for choosing a great leader. I also want to congratulate Mother Karua for being nominated as Deputy President. And I also want to tell Hashi that Muranga will be a republic.
Thank you. With your Muranga, Texas Fedora Cup, you can put it back right now. We're winding up the show. Thank you very much, Peter Kagwenja.
There we are.
There you with your Muranga, Texas. Thank you. And as we wind up the show,